All right, good afternoon. My name is Brian Reinhart. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing with High Robotics US. I really want to thank our friends here at DC Veclocity for having me today. And what we're going to talk about is flexibility. So the title of the presentation is Dense, Fast, and Flexible, Why Flexibility is Becoming Critical to All Warehousing Automation. And I think to better understand flexibility, we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, how do we judge success in automation? Traditionally, some of the key milestones to judging success in automation would be density and speed. How efficiently can we utilize our space within the warehouse, and how quickly can we get orders out the door and minimize the need and reliance on labor? And those two have really driven a lot of the progress and innovation in the industry. I think what we're starting to see now is that there's a third criteria for success coming into automation, and that's flexibility. We want to make sure that we're maximizing our space and that we're also improving our speed, but we want to do it in a flexible manner. And I guess the reason is, well, we'll take a look at that here. So first off, what problems need solving? One of the biggest issues in the industry right now is the dynamic buying behavior. Buyers are constantly changing their requirements and expectations from their product providers. What used to be 3-day fulfillment is now next day. What used to be same day is next hour, right? The demand on returns processing is at an all-time high. And so this type of buyer behavior, as it continues to evolve and change, ensures that the automation behind it needs to be able to evolve and change to meet those growing expectations. If we take a look at labor shortages, right? Ask anyone running a DC what their biggest problem is right now, they'll tell you it's labor. I have a friend that runs a 3PL, and what he used to say was when they were building out networks in the 3PL industry, they would target where the end users are to minimize freight and shipping costs. Now, they target where labor is. Where can we get people to work into the facility? And if you're lucky enough to find labor, the labor costs are at an all-time high. And so what this means is that the reliance on labor is becoming more and more detrimental to an operation, more and more detrimental to an operating budget, and just continues to increase almost exponentially. Real estate costs. The dollar per square foot is at an all-time high in the United States. And it used to be the saying, you know, in other countries, they would build up, but in the US, we have land, so they build out. That's really not the case anymore. What we're seeing is an evolution where vertical space is becoming more and more paramount in the warehousing space. And as real estate continues to rise, we're going to see more of that. In addition to that, we want to talk about operational accuracy and efficiency. For every mispick, for every misorder, that triggers a series of events that have large cost impact to the end to the provider. Returns processing is twice as expensive as order fulfillment. Most folks will just resend the next product out at no additional cost. So you have inventory costs and inventory loss and slippage with inaccurate orders. And then lastly, the other one that I wanted to mention was just seasonality. We're seeing buying behavior drive seasonality spikes like never before. Certain operations, whether it be around Black Friday, back to school, in the fashion industry as new items are released, we'll see seasonality peaks 3 and 4 times of what their standard order fulfillment volumes are. This really puts a lot of stress on automation, because the question now becomes, do we design for the seasonality to meet it, or do we design for our standard operation but then have a month out of the year where we can't meet our order volume? And so it's a bit of a catch-22 that doesn't have a simple answer. So all of these problems in conjunction are making it very difficult for operations and warehousing personnel to automate their systems. And my contention and belief is that as long as we're kind of checking all 3 boxes, density, speed, and flexibility, we can knock out a lot of these challenges. And so what are some of the keys to achieving that flexible system, already understanding how density and speed can do it? So some of the things that we want to look for when it comes to flexibility, and then some of the problems that they'll address, is what I'll cover here in our next section. So one of the top indicators of flexibility is a proof of concept or a pilot program. You would never purchase a vehicle without test driving it, yet we invest tens or hundreds of $1 millions in automation without ever ensuring that it can accommodate our operation. When deciding to partner with an automation provider, ask if they can do proof of concepts, demo systems, pilot operations. This will reduce your initial risk, assess fit within the facility, and ultimately determine whether you've selected a product and a partner that can meet your growing and ever-changing demands. We want to take a look at speed to market. As automation becomes more and more adopted across basically everyone running a warehouse these days, we're seeing all-time high backlogs within the industry. Systems that could have been delivered in 8 months are now taking 12 months. Systems that would take a year, taking 18, 2, 3 years, so on and so forth. And it's kind of just becoming accepted. But I think we really need to ask ourselves why. You know, one of the things we addressed was the dynamic buying behavior. If what we designed for today is not indeed what we're projecting 2 years down the road, how will our automation adopt? How will our operation handle those changes? And the longer that lead time exists, the more opportunity there is for that evolution and that change to introduce risk into our system. So the way we can adopt that is by improving our speed to market. Don't settle for a 2-year project cycle or an 18-month project cycle. Really push your manufacturers and integration partners to be able to deliver inside of a year. There's a lot of new and emerging tech out there that does bulk manufacturing, bulk storage, and can bring products to market inside of a year. What used to be 18 months needs to be 7 or 8 months from contract to go live. And once we've decided to select that, how is the ease of integration? From a flexibility standpoint, we want to make sure that we're introducing a system that doesn't completely require us to change everything we're doing within the warehouse. And so when we talk about ease of integration, we talk about facility infrastructure. Do we have to completely re-level our floor? Do we have to pour a slab because of some outrageous flatness requirements? Do we have to tear down all of our existing infrastructure and sell it off for scrap? Finding automation alternatives that can reuse the existing equipment in place and adapt to any harsh or non-perfect conditions in a facility shouldn't just be a nice to have, but should become a requirement. Let's make sure that the automation is working for us and that we're not working for the automation. In addition, if we have an existing operation, how can we add to it or potentially expand without disrupting it? A lot of automation is very installation intensive, whether it's, again, working on the infrastructure of the facility or even requires a blackout area within the warehouse for installation and commissioning. If those are the cases, we need to investigate how is that going to impact our existing operation. Will it make us less efficient? Will it quarantine products that we would otherwise need access to? When we're talking about flexibility, we want to make sure that the automation can be adapted and introduced to the warehouse without having a major impact on our existing operation. And to that point, we want to make sure that we don't need to do a massive facility overhaul. You know, do we need to knock down a wall because the density isn't good? Do we need to put up a safety barrier because the equipment can't be around people? We want to make sure that we're selecting automation that can work within the confines of what we have. And what I would tend to say is that the industry is becoming so adaptive and so user-friendly that if for some reason we're working with a partner, an integrator, or a manufacturer that is going to require a large facility systemic overhaul, we need to be asking ourselves, is this truly necessary, or have we just selected a non-flexible and a rigid technology? And so far, everything that I've talked about has really been around kind of the mechanization, the operation, the facility in regards to flexibility, but we also need to look at pricing. Traditionally, industrial automation has taken a CapEx pricing model where via payment milestones and down payment, progress milestone payments, most of the end user's budget is out of a capital expense budget. What we want to introduce is flexibility from a financial standpoint in that not so much everything coming from CapEx, but repurposing those expenses into an operational expense budget. That may matter to some end users and it may not matter to others, but the point is that the option exists when it does matter. And so the way to do that is via RaaS, Robots as a Service model, financing option, leasing option, renting option. These are all low-cost ways to introduce automation into your facility and pay for it over time versus all at once. And so, we kind of touched on really what are the drivers, how do we measure success, what are some of the problems, and then how can flexibility adjust those. And what I really want to try to do is just leave us with a few thought exercises that I think encompass everything that I covered really well. And so what I would say is when you're going through automation, when you're considering taking on a project, ask yourself the set of questions that you see here. If the SKU profile of my facility drastically changes overnight, let's say we acquire another company, let's say we do a merger with another manufacturer, let's say my A movers become B movers and a C mover becomes an A mover, how will that affect my operation? Can it adjust, or is it too rigid? If I need to increase the capacity of a facility on short notice, what options do I have? And historically, we would throw labor at it. As we said earlier, that's going to be really expensive, if not impossible. If we have to increase overnight or within a week, how can we do that? If I'm required to move, upgrade, or change facilities, how disruptive is that going to be to the automation? Can I tear it down, disassemble it, and reassemble it, or will it be completely unusable? How can I meet seasonal demands without oversizing and overpaying for a system? How can we accommodate seasonality with flexible potential renting or leasing technology versus just paying for a system that's 50% oversized? And all of this kind of goes into my last question and my last thought exercise that I would challenge anyone purchasing automation. Is my automation working for me, or am I working for my automation? At the end of the day, the reason we're going to automate is to reduce cost, make us more efficient, and help us serve our clients better. If that's not the case, or if it comes with a bunch of contingencies and strings attached, then maybe our automation isn't working for us and we're working for our automation. So that's pretty much what I have today. Again, I really want to thank DC Veclocity for having me and encourage everybody, when you're considering automation, think about the density, think about the storage, think about the efficiency and the speed, but first and foremost, consider the flexibility. Thank you very much.